Excellent. So, as I said, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be talking about the art of the hack today. Really, what we're kind of going to be covering is how cyber criminals are targeting private equity. And in my mind, there's no better person to talk about this in detail and in depth, and to a level of technical understanding that I could only dream of having. And that is Hassan, who I will hand over to introduce himself in a minute. But for those that don't know me, I'm Ed Starkey. I'm a director in the GRC cybersecurity practice here at Thomas Murray. I've been here for 2 years. I've spent a number of years at Kroll, and then before that, PwC, doing lots in the cyber M&A space, working with PE. Hassan, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Hassan. I am one of the senior analysts and the pen testers, red teamers, whatever you want to call us, at Thomas Murray. My primary job is breaking things, and breaking and entering is what I like to say. But pretty much we work our way, we figure out vulnerabilities and issues in organizations and try to exploit them as much as possible. Prior to Thomas Murray, I worked at Kroll with Ed as well, and where we done very similar things. And prior to that, my background is IT, sysadmin, and that sort. So I've seen both sides of the spectrum.
Wonderful. Thanks ever so much, Hassan. And it's worth bearing in mind that the credibility that Hassan brings to a conversation like this, Hassan will always downplay it, but we'll pick his mind later on to understand the mentality of the hacker, which I think leads us really nicely onto the agenda. So if you could flick on, Hassan, that would be fab. Cool. So brief introduction. We'll understand, as I said, the hacker's mindset, and we'll look to basically understand what it is that a hacker does, how an attack plays out, where the information is collected and collated, and then look to learn from it. So there's always a so what question in cybersecurity, and we basically want to use all the learnings that Hassan's got and kind of make it relevant for you and your organizations. So, as I said, Q&As at the end, but equally, if you have any ideas or additional questions that you want to kind of drill down onto any specific topics, then do let us know. That would be fantastic. Thank you. Excellent. So, brief introduction and overview of Thomas Murray, just to kind of put it into perspective and into context. We are a cybersecurity practice operating out of Europe, but then we also have an office and threat intelligence analysts based in Colombia. So we are global, and we focus on cyber threat intelligence. That is really the focus of the practice, and making sure that we can operationalize that side of things. So as a team, 5,000 different previous client engagements. We kind of managed to accelerate the incident response process, which we're very proud of. So it means clients get more bang for the buck, but also we bring 170 years. So we are the best kept secret in cybersecurity. Excellent. If you could flick on, that'd be fab. So we sit within a large organization. We work a lot with the financial kind of key players really in the financial services sector, both within Europe and then globally. So we have a really extensive body of knowledge in when it comes to kind of FMIs, GPs, LPs, basically anything in kind of finance. We've been all over for the best part of kind of 30 years. We work with some of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, advising them on cybersecurity across their asset managers, as well as kind of PE and the direct investments that are made. Excellent. If you could flick on, that'd be fantastic. So, quick poll as we kick off, just to understand roughly who's here, really. Kind of what sector, whether you're in private to yourself, whether you're a general partner, whether you're part of a PE-owned business, or you're just here because it's Wednesday morning and you'd like to spend some time with Ed and Hassan. So the poll should appear on the top right-hand side, and this very much is a poll to kind of understand the audience, as well as giving individuals a chance to work out where the pole is and all that kind of good stuff. Excellent. So a number of different polls that come in. So most of the audience here, Hassan, are private equity, which kind of expect really. We're looking at criminals that are actively kind of targeting private equity and taking those learnings. As I said, one thing, general partners, one thing I will say is that there's increasing focus from GPs into the LP space, generally as the awareness of cyber and particular areas of concentration risk kind of come into play, but we can drill down into that later on. So thank you everybody for doing the poll. That's great. So Hassan, if we can move on, and I think the first thing we want to understand really is the hacker's mindset. And this is something that I think is absolutely fundamental to this space. I don't think hacking is a particular skill set. I don't think it's a particular tool set. I think it is a mentality. So as we said, we focus a lot on cyber threat intelligence. And if we understand the mentality of what makes basically hackers tick, I think we've put ourselves in a much better position from a defensive perspective. So let's understand the hacker's motivations, and let's pick Hassan's brain as we go along. Hassan, I don't know if you want to cover any of these, anything that makes you particularly excited.
No, you're definitely correct. Hacking is a mindset, and people that go into hacking are, even if it's legal, unethical, whatever you want to go through, it is ultimately a mindset of how someone thinks, and they want to either break things. But then it goes down to what are people's motivations? What are the hackers' motivations? And most of the time, it falls into two categories: financial gain, which is very prevalent now, but like old 2000s and 2000, like ages ago, it was mostly down to fun. People trying to break things, people trying to have some social credibility, people trying to make a name kind of for themselves. But now it's kind of split out into, like, you've got the espionage bit where that might be a secondary factor where someone gets to sell data. But when I think of it, it's mostly financial gain and in the fun category, because you do see, like, things like Scattered Spider. They're a bunch of kids, almost, if you want to call them that, that are just hacking everyone or whatever they get their hands onto.
And Hassan, for the benefit of those, for the benefit of the tape, as it were, Scattered Spider, they've been in the news quite a lot recently, at least kind of in the UK. Are you able to kind of, I guess, outline some of their earlier work?
So, I mean, M&S was probably the biggest one there, right?
Yeah.
You've got M&S. I think they've been attributed to Harrods.
Yeah.
I'm sure JLR's on that list as well, to say the most recent. But yeah, they are almost low tech. They're not doing some crazy amount of hacking. Ultimately, it comes down to some social engineering. So we can consider that as low tech as technically it can be.
Absolutely, and I think, but we'll cover we'll dive into the social engineering, some of the techniques. But I think just that factor there that you mentioned, there's a community, there's almost it's not a credit score for hackers, but you do have an element of kudos, or whatever the correct term is. There's almost doing a one-up on somebody else.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you pretty much do get a reputation as those are the guys that hacked that big company, right? Or those are the guys that made millions doing that, or hundreds of millions in some cases. But it's vast, and it can. The reputation is not just from the fun aspect; it's from the entire spectrum. The larger the organization, bigger the reputation.
Yeah, I think I just find it absolutely fascinating. And you mentioned there that it's fun, and for somebody that may struggle to kind of understand what's meant by that. Not that don't have fun, obviously, but what makes it fun? Why is it enjoyable? Is it the challenge? Is it the thrill of the chase? What is it?
It's a mix of it, right? Because when you're the way we look at it from a technical perspective is you've achieved something that no one else might have achieved before, or it might have been we've broken into an organization and we've proved that we can do so using either very low tech or very high tech. Either way,
Mm.
it's a technical accomplishment. But the other part of it is you figured something out that may not have been done before.
Yeah, it's as I said, it's really interesting that achieving something that's never been done before. That it's your moon landing in a lot of respects. No, it's great. It's really, really good. One of the things that I guess I'll be really keen to kind of understand from your perspective is we mentioned earlier that you're kind of in your introduction, you mentioned that you've got that kind of really solid background in kind of IT and infrastructure. I was wondering how that complements this and whether is it the reverse of what you're trying to do? Are you using the same skill set? What does,
It's
how does
pretty
that
much
play?
the reverse. I've set up those systems before. I know how the systems operate. I kind of know the weaknesses in some of those systems, and I know the not the bypasses, but the steps people take to make some of those systems work because they can be. It's a very technically annoying process to do the secure way, but then doing a quick and fast implementation of a product, for example, could lead to there being some security holes, and which I've seen in the past and I've fixed in the past. But switching it around to the pen testing side, because I know where they are, I know where to look.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you ever so much. What is it? It's relying on, yes, it's technical, but then also that human element. I know we kind of mentioned social engineering earlier on, but I guess you're able to empathize and understand the challenges that a network admin might have on a daily basis, the need to deliver quickly versus potentially securely. And yeah, those insights I think are massively helpful by the sounds of it in terms of kind of what you do. Um, I guess the one here that stands out from a PE perspective, access to portfolio companies. I think there's potentially a perception within the hacker community that there's direct access, but the reality is that direct access from PE into a portfolio company doesn't exist. But it's the information that could be collected. It's the understanding of how a business operates that's been invested in. It's that level of detail and knowledge and data and insights that could then provide you access into different portfolio companies, which I think kind of leads us quite nicely into the next piece around how a target is selected. I don't know if Hassan, is there anything here that jumps out to you immediately?
Yeah, well, normally the way we target an organization is we're going to see, is there an opportunity? When we have a target inside this, is there an opportunity? So from the external point of view, can we attack them from there? Or do we know that they're going through a merger, for example, or they're being bought by a PE house, or they're being bought by anyone, right? There's an opportunity there. There's going to be a lot of fast moving components. There might also be some changes to that organization. So you can kind of be confident enough to say we can target potentially that person, or we can target IT, saying we're from the merging company's IT and say we need access to this. Or it might be we send out an email to employees saying you need to complete X training to be onboarded to the new systems, for example. And they'll click through whatever. But that's one. The other one is intellectual property. If they have something cool that we must do, I mean, we've seen a lot of like gaming organizations be hacked because they have intellectual property, they have code. Another one is attacking organizations that don't necessarily release a login to intellectual property. So F5 is a firewall company, and they make a lot of other things as well. But their code is not very open source. It's not open to the internet. And having access to that, we can make vulnerabilities. So again, it depends on what the eventual goal is. If it's mass internet compromise, or if it's targeting a specific organization to make some money, right? If they've got a lot of financial activity going on, or if the company is very well known, we can go and target those guys as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you often kind of hear or see is when a particular organization or industry comes under fire from a particular group. We mentioned Scattered Spider earlier, and I guess automatically when there's a group, there's conversations, there's kind of group dynamics, there's that I guess that consensus that, or maybe not consensus, but there's a consensus of attacking a particular group or for a particular reason. I kind of ideological alignment, and I guess that feeds into it. So with particular industries, some are more targeted than others. You mentioned the gaming industry, for example. I guess because there's natural interest there, right? That feeds into that side of things. The fast moving, I think, is particularly interesting and important. Quicker an organization.
Yeah. It's probably not the worst one, but it's where an organization is, if there's many changes coming into place, there's going to be a lot of things, a lot of cogs moving. And it's not that people's defenses go down, but people are bombarded with information that they may miss something. They may need to do X, Y, and Z, but there's also ABC coming towards them, and then an attacker. So the common phrase you'll hear is, it's not if you have a cyber attack, it's more when you're having a cyber attack. So it's being prepared for that scenario.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Keystone, in this context, is an organization that carries, I guess, almost a disproportionate degree of importance, whether you could use the term pivotal organization, but one that sits at the heart of an ecosystem, I guess. One that gives access or potential access to other targets. Yeah, that's great. One thing I will say is, as we go through, please do feel free to kind of drop in those questions. I've got one eye. I think I am developing a wandering eye, or lazy eye, I should say, not a wandering eye, a lazy eye, and I'll keep an eye on the chat as we go along. There's a question here from Ken. Have you seen any recent PE deals directly impacted by a hack? Yes. Yeah, the answer is yes, Ken. Thank you ever so much. We will get to that shortly. But yeah, there's been a number of deals that have been impacted in different ways. So there have been some that have been kind of, we use the term kind of killed completely, or just kind of terminated, and others that have had to take into account the nature of the attack, the nature of the data, and kind of put in place mechanisms and means to compensate for that within the obligations that are drafted and the finance that, or the transaction, basically. But we'll get there as quickly as we can. So the next one, really, if we could trot on. So where do you get information? So all attacks are based on information. Hassan, what does it look like?
I'll cover a few of these, but internet scanning, I'll cover quickly, is every day of the week, every day of the year, every minute or every second, there is someone scanning the internet. And they're basically just trying to figure out what's exposed, if it's something misconfigured. And that's like a really quick way for an attacker to understand if they should go after an organization, or how they should go after an organization. Social media is now a bigger risk for organizations. So LinkedIn, even Facebook, for example, and Twitter, or X, if you want to call it that. LinkedIn being one where employees post about their new roles, or they post that I've left a role, but they also post potentially a picture of their badge. So the badge that gets them into the office. So that doesn't necessarily be a factor of we're going to get through into that office using that badge, but we can design an exactly the same badge, go into that office, and have a story to say, oh, I'm sorry, my badge is not working anymore, and can you give me a temporary badge, or can you give me a best guest badge, whatever. And that's got us into organizations before walking in through the front door. Job adverts are filled with information. You now know what technology an organization is using. You know what kind of team structures they have. You know what they are planning on doing and what responsibilities of certain roles are. So where a user going linking the job adverts and the social media, we can now go find the job advert, find the title, and then search social media for those people. We know that these people handle XY systems. They handle the finance systems. They handle front office, back office, whatever you want to talk about. We can then target them in specific ways. So the job adverts not only give us the technology that's inside the organization that's not necessarily leaked or shown to the outside world apart from this information. And then you got dark web. The dark web is full of information, full of all sorts of people, but there is a lot of information where we can buy data, we can access data, or there's just people are posting data for the sake of it. Again, going back to that element of why they do it, the motivation, it's for fun. They're trying to make a name for themselves. So they post that data, say, look what I got. And we can go use that. We can go collect that. We can see what's going on there. The other one is third-party sites and data leaks. So an organization might be hacked and data is taken from there. So that data could contain sensitive data about your organization or about yourself. We then can figure out what we can do with that data. So one example is fit-out firms publish case studies about organizations they've set up an office for. And you get this quite a lot in organizations that have new offices or they want to have a new office. They'll contact a firm. That firm will then do a case study and upload those pictures to their sites. We can now know the layout of that organization. We know the building plans. We know how we can get in. If we're doing like an on-site pen test, a physical pen test, if you want to call it that. But then again, there's also the other part of it where if you're accessing another system, so you're accessing a finance system that's external to you, or you're accessing an asset management system that's external, or software as a service, if those credentials are leaked or we get access to that data, we can then see more information about your organization. Observation reconnaissance is when we're physically, again, going back to that physical pen test, which is a weak point. The human aspect of an attack is the largest. If there's coffee shops nearby, if there's a Tesco nearby, there's been attackers that have followed people. There's been attackers that have sat next to someone to try and get access to their RFID badge, which is needed to tap into the office, needed to tap into the turnstiles or tap the elevators, for example. It's identifying those predictable behaviors as well. So if there's a smoking shelter, it might not be a shelter, but it might just be a corner on the side of the office. And most of the time, those people are very talkative. So you get them talking, you get a bit of information out of them. There's been cases where we've been able to get badges. So just standing next to someone, we can throw in their badge and then use that to get into the office. Or the worst one is we can just walk in behind them because we're now a part of them. And in some cases, there's another exit for the smokers, which is not monitored, like the front door, for example.
Yeah, I think some of this stuff sounds potentially a bit James Bondy or a bit far fetched, but you do this, right? You will identify targets and pull together this information, and if it's a case of physical access is the best way to is where you're going to get the success, you'll do that.
So usually attackers will go for the simplest route or the non-obtrusive route or the non-destructive route, right? Going on site is probably a bit more dedication. So when you are starting to be targeted, maybe politically or via a certain country, or you've said something and you are being targeted for a reason, that on-site aspect may be the case where someone's going to go and say, okay, we're breaking into the office. Or it might be that they've exhausted all the other opportunities. So they've tried phishing, they've tried calling the help desk, they've tried, for example, message users, or they've gone to LinkedIn, tried to do social media attacks, or they've tried to hack from the outside where that internet scanning part comes from, but they've not been successful. So the next step is, let's get on site, let's get work our way into the office. What we can do when we're in the office, if we're looking for data, we can go see what people have on their desks. If we're trying to get access to IT systems, we can either plant a device. So we've planted devices under meeting room desks, for example, where no one goes to look, no one needs to look, or we've planted them in the ceiling, which is great fun. I've been standing up on the toilet because on top of the toilet there's a ceiling which gives access to a network point. And then there's the aspect of, can we get into the server room? So we can potentially walk straight into the server room. There might be a badge, but remember, we might have cloned a badge previously, or we might be waiting for someone to go in, and we've put a device in behind the badge reader where we can collect that data. There's tons of ways it can be done. Depends on the objectives of the attack. Depends on the objectives of what we do. I have seen a question come through, which is, how often do you get caught? In terms of the physical pen test stuff, I haven't been caught yet. Potentially like a serial killer, I do have a trophy of things. Essentially, we make a letter called an authorization letter, which is, if we do get caught, we will then present that letter, which is in a sealed envelope, to whoever has caught us, the security, police, whoever turns up, and say, here's our authorization letter, please contact this person if you need to. And it kind of avoids us getting into major trouble. You can still get in trouble, but it's an authorized test. And I have a few of those on my desk and shelf. So, I won't talk too much about that, but we have been caught from the technical aspect. In some scenarios where we've carried out a malware attack. So we've got someone to click on a link. They downloaded something. We've then got access to their computer system. We're trying to figure our way around the network. We have been caught in the sense of the security or the IT department have noticed something, or they've got an alert. But the aspect of being caught and achieving your objective, it differs. So, for example, one point where we've accessed our organization, we've gone after the data, we've got the data we needed. Yes, we've been caught after the fact, but our priority is to help the organization. So we'll then say how we did that, and give them steps and give them kind of a playbook to say, this is what you should be doing, and this is what you should put into place to avoid that. In terms of a physical pen test, I've been caught once, but only after I completed the test and I pushed my boundaries, rather than calling the test there. I decided to test a secondary reception that they had in the organization. I went up there, and it was a visitor only reception, so it was only supposed to be for people that are known to be coming up. I went up there, and the receptionist was like, oh, hi, how can I help you? And I was like, oh yeah, and just I wasn't supposed to be there, so I just need the toilet. I'm supposed to be downstairs meeting IT, for example. I went to the toilet, and from the toilet I disappeared. Of course, sometimes toilets have elevators near them, so I just took that to the other floor, and I was there. So I got caught, but that was after our objective and test was complete, and I was pushing the boundaries to see who would catch us. And for that organization, it was a perfect example of saying, X person has caught me, but the front desk hasn't caught me. So who should be training who should be asking questions? I think it pretty much comes down to asking questions and making sure everyone knows who's who. If you don't, then you put into place your playbook to say, let's call security, let's call someone that might know who they are. If not, go from there.
Fantastic. No, really, really. Have a sip of water, Hassan. That was really, really good. That was really great.
Yeah, I get excited about it.
No, it was great. I mean, this is what you do for a living, and it's something you enjoy. And there are others that I always think that in a different life, Hassan, you'd have turned out very differently. We wouldn't have been having this conversation. We'd have been, it's just fantastic to get the opportunity to pick your brain on this kind of thing. Yeah, there's so many things there that you mentioned, like the physical security aspect, and it's the safest place, right? The head office is the safest place. There's an assumption that you've got security guards at the door, and that you badge in and you badge out. That therefore it's safe. But the reality is, as you said, you can clone cards, and it's not that difficult. I mean, yes, you need to know how to do it, but once you understand it, or once you understand how things work, it's reverse engineering.
Yeah, definitely.
And excellent. So, I think it's time for another poll. So we've spoken a lot about the attack and the attacker mindset, and really what we're doing is teeing up the application of everything that we've seen, everything that we've heard within the context of a deal, within the M&A, the investment lifecycle. It's important because of the audience that we've got, and the nature of the business. That this is the key business focus. This is the key activity that everything kind of heads towards, everything builds towards. So we mentioned earlier on pressure points, and this is the point at which a business can either succeed or fail, and making informed decisions is the nature of the game. So yeah, just trying to understand here really, where the state of due diligence and the application of the cyber context within the audience. So we've got a split. So we've got a complete split of individuals, of the status of individuals kind of conducting cybersecurity due diligence. We've got yes, no, sometimes. Okay, so fascinating. Cyber DD is definitely an area that hasn't been around for as long as some of the other areas and of kind of due diligence. It's an emerging kind of area. It's being refined. It's just new and a bit different. So obviously, in order to kind of understand why it's important, or the value behind it, it's kind of massively important to understand the cybersecurity and the risk from an investment context. And as luck would have it, we've got there's some slides coming up on the investment context itself. So Hassan, if you could flick forward a couple, that would be fab. Thank you. So I really like this as a slide, as a way of explaining kind of risk within the deal life cycle. We mentioned earlier, or Hassan mentioned earlier, the information that gets released on social media, the outfitting organizations that release pictures of the offices that they've provided new technology services to. It's almost the same thing within M&A. There's lots of shouting, and rightfully so. Organizations are proud of the effort, their involvement in a transaction. So a deal announcement will be, yes, it comes from the investors, but then the supporting consultants, the lawyers, everybody else will actively contribute to the announcement. They'll make their own announcements and advertise the fact that they're involved. And I think at that point, you've raised your head above the parapet. The organization is now being publicized from multiple different angles, multiple different perspectives. So from the left-hand side, and we've got cyber DD there. I think I positioned it right at the end of the due diligence phase. It's often seen as a point in time exercise. You kind of go in and look at an organization from at a single point in time. Traditionally, you go in, have a look at documents, speak to stakeholders if you've got time, but that point in time is drastically less important than other areas. And I would argue that it's not always the case. Yes, there's a need to make sure that organizations are managing the deal timeline effectively, but cybersecurity generally is such a high risk for significant number of businesses that it's often not given the respect and the time that it deserves in a lot of respects. So yes, the due diligence may be conducted, but it's a reduced effort. It's reduced access. It's really kind of quite superficial. And there are ways that you can kind of gain more value from cybersecurity and ultimately put more value into businesses and investments with very little effort, direct kind of effort or direct contact with target companies. So if we kind of flick on, I think we kind of cover what happens if it all goes wrong, basically. So fantastic. So the advantage of monitoring PE target for an extended period of time. I think that kind of hits this or talks to this slide kind of quite nicely. So we will answer that one, Ken, as we go through. But basically on the top kind of three boxes, the top three columns, direct losses. We know this is the stuff that hits the headlines. So what have we got? On the left-hand side there, we've got One Advance is an IT provider. That organisation supports the 111 services in the UK, and that was a fine from the ICO. So system outages, organised or individuals unable to access NHS services, the interference in people's access to healthcare, I guess, is why the fine kind of came in. And I should mention that the three organisations from left to right, Advance, CDK, and South Staff's Water, are all owned or have all been invested in by private equity. So this kind of thing kind of does happen, and it does impact PE directly. The next one, CDK Global, this was a US organisation. They provide software to auto parts companies, basically garages from my reading of that particular term. So if you wanted to have a new wheel nut or dashboard or whatever, it's the system that the garage uses to run their operations. They had a multi-week outage. The software was used extensively across 15,000 different dealerships. Estimated losses for the dealers themselves ran into the billions. So it was 1.02 billion in loss by the dealers. And the one thing I will say is that the 25 million there is the ransom that was allegedly, and I stress that, allegedly paid in order to bring this business back up. And that hasn't been officially confirmed, but sources would suggest potentially that that ransom was paid. So yeah, lots of kind of significant numbers here. And I think loss in value generally, a lot of effort goes into driving the value, increasing the value of organizations, and a significant event can impact the focus and the direction of an organization. The next one, the indirect losses, that's still rumbling on. That is a potential kind of class action lawsuit against South Staff's Water as a result of a data breach. And that's the number of claimants that we're currently at the moment. And on the right hand side, the worst case, these are the organizations that have gone bust as a result, or at least contributing, or at least with a cyber incident, significantly contributing to an organization going bust. You've got a vodka and other high-end premium spirits manufacturer in the US. KNP in the middle there was a logistics firm over 128 years old in the UK. And Ironhouse Group is a insurance organisation. At one point, I think it had 78, don't quote me on that, it might be 70 million in annual revenues at its peak. That was offered in more than 5,000 retail stores in Germany. So a significant organisation that went bust. All of these, with the exception of South Staff, are the type of I guess, kind of SME space where lots of PE will look to kind of go in and drive that value. And I think that's where it leads nicely into at the bottom there. So Ken asked earlier where we've seen deals that have been impacted. And this is the stuff that we've seen personally as practitioners that we can't put logos against. We can't, we can't kind of publicize the fact, but yeah, we've seen delayed investment. We've seen, escrow provisions because an attack, a hack has emerged during the course of the due diligence, that's still ongoing. We've seen a delayed exit because it doesn't make sense that the no investor's going to want to go near an organization that's recovering or trying to recover from an incident. Yeah, so lots of disruption here, lots of kind of impact on ultimately the focus of a business, the execution of a deal, and then the value injection that takes place through the efforts of PE. So you mentioned, it was questioned earlier why it's important to monitor an organization over a period of time. The answer, I think, is in the next slide, Hassan. So these are attacks that ultimately occur, but as we saw earlier, the collection and the collation of information and data takes place over an extended period of time. The dark web stuff that Hassan was mentioning, that's available. That's available now for multiple organizations, hundreds, thousands of organizations on if you know where to look. And that by looking at places where hackers look, you're able to piece together the potential for an organization could be attacked. So that's one area that's sort of focused on. The next one, the pre-deal monitoring. This is using attack surface management tools and understanding how an organization is presenting itself to the world. Really, are they keeping up to date with their patching? Because all of these could present an opportunity, if done ineffectively, to an attacker. So yes, motivation or bringing down particular organizations, but then also the opportunistic element that comes in as well. The M&A due diligence is something that we touched upon, and that has a role, absolutely. But if you can load into that particular activity the insights that you've collected and collated over a period of time about a potential target, it enriches that and provides much greater value, much greater value. And then the first and final 100 days, we saw that spike in risk once an organization or once an investment has been announced. That was, when you're onboarding and then offboarding, when you're investing and then realizing your investment. Those first 100 days are absolutely critical in the run up to into asset realization. The same, there's a degree of confidentiality that you want thrown around the transaction. All of those parties that are involved could potentially be the target of an attack and undermine any efforts that are being made. And then also just the ongoing efforts to protect the value that's been created by the efforts of the team. So with that being said, if you could flick onto the next, I think it's our last poll, but it would be good to just trot through this one. So bearing in mind everything that's been said, and this isn't an opportunity to point fingers, it's more an opportunity to explore as a group. What's, is there anything that you're doing? Is there anything that you're not doing? So ASM is attack surface monitoring. And then on the last question there, yes, using questionnaires, attack surface monitoring and dark web monitoring. So we would really see that as the gold standard when it comes to kind of monitoring either an investment or a recent acquisition, with the exclusion, with the caveat that nothing internal is being deployed. So there's a couple of bits there just to give people a quick chance to answer some questions. So yes, questionnaire based, so it's good that activities are taking place, but equally that will give you that point in time review without giving you that kind of richer kind of detail, and that richer context, which is just so massively valuable. So, Hassan, we've got a couple of slides to kind of plot through. One thing that I will, 2 minutes, lessons and warnings for organizations in this space, Hassan. So fast moving organizations looking to add value to businesses, looking to drive change and accelerate existing programs or implement new programs. What are the lessons that we take from Hacker Hassan into businesses?
The biggest one is making it harder, giving them more obstacles to go through to get to their objective. So the biggest one that's probably been told to everyone is MFA, or two-factor authentication. That really stops and slows down an attacker. It doesn't stop them because there are ways around it. It's slightly more difficult to implement. It's slightly difficult more to automate, and it's more on a targeted basis. Another thing would be people, culture, and the training that's given. Social engineering is, as I said, a massive part of an attack, and it can be the biggest part because it's going after the human element. So making sure there's a question culture, people asking questions, people making sure, did you send that email to me? Is this email legitimate? Sending it to IT to say, do you think this is okay? But as soon as someone starts asking questions, the attack likelihood can go down from being very successful. The other part is, if you have clicked on something, if you have opened something that's potentially dangerous or malicious, then letting someone know as soon as possible, because that will give you the quickest, or give them the quickest reaction time, rather than having to wait until something in the network or in the environment happens. But those would be my pretty much my big two.
I think that's all really, really great. I think MFA is absolutely one of the key things that are considered and should be considered by any consultant in this space, any advisor. I think it was seen as a bit of a game changer, wasn't it, when it came in? And it was I think it was potentially seen as a bit of a golden bullet. It is less of that now, and
well, yeah, as time goes on, attackers develop new technology, new techniques.
I was going to say, you build a 10-foot wall and Hassan will find a 12-foot ladder. There's no two ways about it, but it does, it's a stumbling block, isn't it? It does make it more difficult, and the cultural piece is so important, and it's just tricky to work out how you go about putting a value on that and assessing that as part of a due diligence exercise, which it should 100% be part of. But and it's something that I genuinely love doing. I find it absolutely fascinating. But it's the learnings from conversations like this, from picking your brain, Hassan, that I think makes me a much better practitioner in this space. So I owe you a massive thank you. Excellent. So we've got just over 10 minutes left. I want to leave kind of 5 minutes for questions at the end, but the next slide is called kind of Q&As, and I think what we'll do is we'll focus on the takeaways and then leave some time at the end. Key takeaways for me, I think we've got 4 listed on the next slide. The first thing really is that cyber incidents are value events. We've seen, as we saw on previous slides, such a significant drop in value, like the destruction of value. We talked to some organizations, and it's a tech organization. It's focused on, developing software for banking clients, and then you go and talk to them, and security hasn't been embedded within those products. And the potential for that value to just be destroyed as a result of a cyber incident is astounding, because we see it in the news every day. It's a risk that becomes an issue with a lot of different organizations, and worst case, it all goes completely wrong. there's an obligation, really. The next one is about kind of having an obligation, having a duty to, a responsibility to provide resiliency, not just for yourselves, but then also within portfolio companies, and then be able to articulate and describe and provide insights up to investors. And that works across that chain. So whether it's GPs to LPs, LPs to portcos, and then back up, and an expectation that everybody involved in this kind of business architecture, this complex business process, should be securing themselves and trusting but verifying that other organizations that they engage with are also equally secure. Cyber intelligence, strategic advantage, absolutely. Like this for me, threat intelligence, there's so much that goes on that isn't fully understood in most businesses. It's not fully understood within M&A practices or within particularly individuals and groups that will throw in cybersecurity as a secondary, almost a value add. You need to dedicate time, a career, to understanding kind of what's going on, how an organization within that side of the dark economy operates. And yeah, you can extract value. It can be a real kind of differentiator, but it needs proper investment, and it needs individuals that are devoted to that can then articulate the risk to practitioners. And lastly, the insurance isn't a strategy, and this is the first time that insurance has been mentioned. But JLR, was it M&S, had 300 million loss. 100 million of it was covered by insurance. So we're still looking at a significant gulf between what was covered and what was and what the actual losses were for an organization. It's part of a strategy, absolutely. It's part of a way of managing risk, but it shouldn't be the sole piece. It's far more kind of complex and nuanced. If we could flick on, there's a little bit more around kind of value creation. We mentioned the value of doing kind of extended periods of monitoring, but then also making sure that due diligence is actionable. And any kind of advice really within cyber is actionable. It's that so what. We mentioned that right at the beginning. The what, the so what, and the now what. And the now what is the bit that's missing so often within this space. Making sure that cyber is kind of embedded and that it's seen as a value protection, and in some cases a strategic advantage for PE firms that do it correctly. We've seen deals that fall apart, that have been undermined and kind of just go wrong, and investing early up front will ensure that doesn't happen. And then, of course, you've got the governance and compliance aspect with lots of regulations that come into it, and we can support in all kinds of different ways. Hassan, there's a slide that I want to kind of keep for a little bit of time on the screen. This is a checklist. It's something that we've produced, and we kind of offer it to individuals that are involved in this space as a takeaway. Please have a look at it. See what you think. We'll kind of always welcome comments, questions, concerns, criticism, and general feedback. But this is being developed by myself and others in the team, with Hassan absolutely providing, the wisdom that we've seen today. And it's a good opportunity to take that and make it actionable within organizations. Make sure that your team is including the points that are in this document within your existing processes. We have got just over 4 minutes left. Hassan, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, I think the only recent thing so going back to threat intel, it's Stephen, head of threat intel, recently found South Korea was a major target for, or PE firms within South Korea were a major target, as well as the companies underneath it as well.
Yeah.
And that was hit massively within the past 2 months. Just thinking out loud.
I think that's a really good, so there's a really good, a really, really good example of something that's incredibly hot off the press and incredibly relevant for this space, and is something that I think we have professional obligation to share with individuals in this space. I think that's something that we've got plans to do as soon as possible. It's just a case of making sure that we can provide it in a way that doesn't put anybody at risk, and that people can get the value from it, that they can learn from it before it becomes more widely before it becomes more widely known. But yeah, this is an area where if you're the first mover, there's a significant advantage, whether that's a first mover in terms of identifying an area to invest in, or being able to respond to particular threat intelligence. I think that's a really good, really good takeaway, Hassan. Thank you for that. So, before we wrap up, I'll ask if there's any more questions. If there aren't, I give everybody just a couple of minutes if there are any. So what should I look for when I do cyber due diligence? So there's a couple of things that I would suggest. Firstly, it's making sure that the threats that are facing the organization are understood. And I think to do that, you need to understand the organization, the wider context in which that organization operates, almost the history of the organization as well. So making sure that you'll be able to understand how the organization got to where it is. So whether that's through a significant investment from a very high profile individual or particular organization, or whether it's part of a carve out, or it's a collection of organizations that have been merged over the course of a number of years. All of these will have a cybersecurity kind of implication. So what would you look for? I would look for individuals that have done this before. I'd look for individuals that will dive into the detail, but then also be able to abstract the information and provide that so what question. I think if you get to the point where you're given a report, or you have a report and you can't answer the so what, that is the piece of information that you're missing.